Hi, my name is Abigail Curlew. I am a PhD candidate in sociology and criminology, a writer, independent journalist, and soon to be a Twitch streamer. My work focuses on hate groups, specifically digital hate groups. And I look at forms of like trans misogyny online, doxing, surveillance, and a wide array of weird internet things. So I came out of the closet 3 years ago, in a really weird time in my life. It was the beginning of my PhD. I had 2 years of trying to deny that I was trans. So I became a bit hyper masculine for a while. I had a big bushy beard, and I was now in a situation where I was a teacher assistant, and I had 60 students that I saw once a week, and several seminar classes. So I was in the public eye, so to say. And within a month of my time at my PhD, I had come to a sudden conclusion that I was a trans woman. It was a weird evening. I was doing a tutorial, so I was in front of a lot of students, and my heart exploded. I was wanting to cry, but I couldn't because I needed to keep performing for my students. So I went home, and I'm a weirdo. I like doing things right away. It's nothing, or I go straight for it. And I emailed my dad and my mom at 3 a.m. My dad was, for some reason, still awake, so he had a little freak out. And the following weeks were really weird because I love my family and everything is wonderful with them right now. But in the beginning, there was I have bipolar disorder. So folks thought that perhaps I was having a manic episode, which I brought up the research saying that that's kind of impossible. But anyways, so it was a tough couple of weeks, but I ended up shaving my beard, going back to my class. The only people who recognized me were my students and the people I was in seminar classes with. Otherwise, I kept running into people in the department who I knew who didn't recognize me at all and were like, oh, nice to meet you. It was hilarious. Coming out at that time, I'm a binary trans woman. And I found the kind of in between of the time I start coming out and the first couple of months incredibly difficult. It was magical. I love the fact that transitioning opens up this wonderful opportunity to remake yourself completely any way you want, with your names, whatever kind of clothing style you want to accept. For me, I was kind of cycling through all kinds of clothing styles. So eventually I got to a part where I was incredibly comfortable. When I came out of the closet, I was in a long-term relationship with someone. I'm no longer with her, but we're still friends. But I remember calling her and just telling her I'm trans. I don't know where this is leading, but I need to transition. I need to do it immediately. Here's my new name and here's my pronouns. And she was really cool with it. I knew she was a trans ally before. I was uncertain at the time of whether she was willing to date a trans woman, whether she was attracted to women in general. And to say the least, there was a bit of exploration. So she was living in a different city at the time during her PhD at a different university. And within a week, she dropped everything she could and came to visit. I had told her when she got here or to my place that you have an out. If you don't want to date me, I completely understand. You didn't sign up for this. But she was a little angry and was like, of course I'm going to date you. And broke my heart. It was so wholesome. She had brought a whole ton of clothing and makeup and a bunch of just general women's stuff to try out. And that weekend we went shopping. It was a thrilling and confusing experience because I had to develop a clothing style from scratch. It was a fascinating time coming out to so many people, coming out to my students, coming out to my family, and like immediately changing my name. Very quickly, I got tied up in that bureaucratic process where you have to change your name and your sex designation on your health information and all of your birth certificates and like all the bureaucratic nonsense. And that was a time. Eventually, I got through that. I changed my name and currently love it. I can't even imagine my dead name anymore. It feels like a completely different person. So though like transitioning is by and large a magical process of reinventing your identity, there are also a lot of trials and tribulations. Sometimes it feels like you're going through a very difficult crucible. It feels like the world's against you. It feels like your body is against you. I know for me, there were a multitude of challenges that I had to face. I, for one, had a lot of difficulty integrating into like women's spaces, like washrooms and change rooms. I had once been before a weightlifter and a rock climber, and I was really into athletics. But coming out of the closet and going through all of those changes, I was afraid of my body being seen. And when you're climbing on a rock wall, like people can fixate on you quite quickly. I was afraid of the change rooms. I refused to go in them because I was afraid people would get mad at me or discriminate against me, or see me as some kind of threat in the change room. And that was very difficult. So I gave up sports. That hurt so much. And like already trans women in sports is such a global controversy. A lot of people think that we shouldn't be in sports at all. We shouldn't be allowed to compete. So I was forced to quit doing sports and athletics, which really was one of the most hurtful things of coming out of the closet and transitioning. I just loved being up in the heights and the challenge of being on a rock climbing wall. It gave me the kind of adrenaline that I need after a day of work in reading and research. I couldn't do it anymore. I was afraid of the change rooms. I was afraid people would discriminate against me. I was afraid of like what people would think as a trans woman in a woman's change room. So I quit sports, which led to an extended depression. Sports used to be my outlet, and I no longer had one of those. Integrating into society in general was really hard. There was lots of street harassment. I felt like a lot of people treated me differently. One of the problems that a lot of trans people experience is that we are just like caked on with stereotypes. People see trans people in a particular lens that is informed by really, really messy media representations of trans people, and just like a lifetime worth of bigotry that people are socialized with. Most people haven't even met a trans person. They just know what they've seen on the media. So trying to navigate society while everyone is now treating you completely differently it was a tribulation. Like it was like a painful challenge. The longer you go through transition, the more you learn about your identity and the more comfortable you get. But when you just are first starting, there's a lot to explore. There's a lot to learn. I was like just buried deep in like amazing YouTube videos, actually, and YouTube tutorials on learning like a cis woman's body language, how women speak, how women walk, what kinds of things to wear, how to like properly use makeup. It was incredibly informative, but also on top of that, you kind of have to work with a body that's now rebelling against you. Like facial hair was the most pressing problem of my time. I had a very thick beard at one point, and it was very hard to disguise after I came out of the closet. So I have been going through just like oodles and oodles of hours of electrolysis, where people put like a small probe into your hair follicles and then shock it, and it is painful, and they have to do it over and over and over again until the hair is gone. That is a long process, and I'm still going through it after years. When I was in my undergrad a bunch of years ago, I remember being at the pub with some of the guys. At the time, I was presenting as a guy, and I didn't really know that I was trans, but I remember being at the bar, sitting down, having a beer, and we were talking, and I brought up the thing. I was like, if I had like $1 million, I would transition and be a woman. And they were like, whoa, that's weird. And I was like, no, it's not. Actually, it's pretty cool. You get the experience being a guy, and then you get the experience being a woman. And that is the most profound adventure I can even think about. And they weren't transphobic, but they were like, wow, that is weird. And it was a bit of an indication to me at the time, like a revelation, that cis people don't imagine changing their gender. That is not a thing that most cis people do. In fact, for the most part, because being cis is normalized and it's seen as the default, cis people oftentimes don't even question their gender. And it made me realize whoa, it's weird that I'm questioning my gender. Why is that? And I think it started that adventure that I'm still on today, and I'm loving it still. Some of the wonderful things about coming out of the closet is experiencing the world in a whole new way. Finally figuring out why you've experienced so much discomfort in your body. It's so magical when someone recognizes you for who you are. They use your correct pronouns. They treat you in your gendered social kind of roles. It was so jarring watching people treat me as one of the guys to then one of the girls, and how all the social dynamics just shifted. It was amazing. Right now, aside from studying hate groups, I try to engage in some trans activism for trans liberation. And I find that the trans community is such a wonderful, uplifting place, meeting lots of great people, being able to work towards being proud of being a trans woman. And when you start getting a handle on your transition, it feels so much more organic. Now I can focus on non-trans things too, because trans people are complicated human beings. Transness isn't always the only thing that we are and the only thing that we should be recognized as. In an ideal society, people would recognize trans women as women first, trans men as men first, and non-binary people as authentically there. Coming out as trans really opened up an entire world of different understandings of gender, different understandings of identity, different understandings of my sexuality. It turned out that I think one of the things that I've missed in my entire life up to that point was the fact that I'm not monogamous. I've always had trouble within monogamous relationships, just feeling trapped. I've loved all my monogamous partners and they were wonderful. And I was thankful for being able to date them and learn so much from them. Eventually, me and my partner at the time agreed that mutually that we would part ways. It's a very peaceful transition, and it was still really wholesome. But I needed time myself to explore not only my gender identity, but also my poly identity. Being polyamorous means that you're able to date more than one person at a time. And beyond that, you're able to fall in love with multiple people. I'm a non-hierarchical poly person, so everyone I date, is equal in terms of like emotional capacity and the structure of my relationship. Some people, of course, have like a primary and secondary where they have like a stable relationship and then they date on the side. But I don't know. I was in a magical experience once where I was in what's called a polycule, where there were 5 of us, including me, dating each other in various ways. Not everyone was dating each other, but I was dating everyone. So it was fun. Really interesting, incredibly wholesome. You get like a lot of support. And even when I was going through some tough times in the hospital because of health issues, all 4 of my partners were like taking cycles visiting me. It was like magical. I'm no longer with anyone. I'm taking some time to myself, but I think polyamory and coming out of the closet as trans really settled a lot of things in my life, a lot of questions that I didn't know the answer to, and sometimes didn't even know what the question was, just like this feeling that something's off and a lot needs to change. One of the most impactful experience I had was actually with my work on the internet. Before coming into the closet, I was kind of like a fledgling writer and independent journalist. I was learning how to work in the trade and get like things published on the internet. I had a bunch of like just like publications and op-eds that I did with like various like university newspapers and online like left-wing blogs. That experience, I didn't actually get that much hostility on the internet. But after I published as a trans woman, especially publishing at the time, it was a time a couple of years ago where there was a lot of arguments across the country about free speech and whether or not like people should misgender a trans person, and whether or not telling someone that they can't misgender a trans person constitute it as like a anti-free speech topic. I wrote some articles saying that the amount of online harassment that trans people experience on a day-to-day basis actually is much more impactful on free speech because it intimidates trans people into silence. And Jordan Peterson shared that article from Vice. And then I had a whole bunch of far-right hate groups sending me some really nasty messages. And from there, I got doxxed by a hate group online. Doxxing is when someone or a group of people scour the internet for all kinds of personal information. This can range from like things that you've posted across the years that you've been using the internet. It could be things that they find from companies. It could be things that maybe someone hacked your account to find. It could range from just like minor things like posts on Reddit, other user handles and user accounts that they can link to your legal name, to your home address, your phone number, your SIN number, passwords for your accounts. And that's like the more major side. Thankfully, no one got that information on me, but like a lot of people actually do, and it's very impactful. Getting doxxed by a hate group is incredibly challenging for a number of reasons. As a trans woman, first things first is that they find your dead name, they find a whole bunch of your pre-transition photos, and they plaster them on the internet. And because there's a lot of traffic with these websites, for probably a year after, if you Googled my name, this would be one of the first things that came up, all of my past identity. The idea that people are watching you on the internet because you're trans is something that like really hits you on a deep emotional level. It triggered my gender dysphoria, which led to a lot of self-shame and self-hatred for a time after this doxing event. And it led to a prolonged depression where I couldn't really engage in my work. I was constantly checking the internet for what like these people were saying about me. At one point, my partner at the time had to be like, yo, stop looking at the internet. You need a break. So after a couple of weeks, I started to feel a little better about it. And though it was terrifying and I was still terrified, my curiosity started to set in. Who were these people? Why do they spend so much time monitoring and tracking trans women on the internet? And why do they do it? It was just wild to me to even experience this when I was presenting as a guy. No one would have done this to me. And when I came out as a woman, suddenly this experience was so jarring. And I realized that a lot of trans women, especially, have been doxxed in a similar way. That when we engage with the public discourse, with public political debates, if we engage in any kind of public work, we're at risk of being attacked by mostly anonymous right-wing hate groups. As well as trans exclusionary radical feminists, which I don't consider feminists. They're definitely in the far right realm. But yes, we get attacked from a wide array of political groups. It makes it very difficult for us to fight for trans liberation. It makes it very difficult for fight for our like human rights legislation. I want to preface this with the fact that you should never ask weird questions about a trans person's like medical transition unless they bring it up themselves first. But for me, I'm a big geek. I love talking about the nitty gritty of medical transition. Going on hormone replacement therapy does a whole lot of things to your body. Like your body completely transforms within the scope of like 1 to 3 years. And watching how fat redistributed around my body, how my emotions started to be framed differently, how my face started changing, how much I felt more comfortable in my body. It was great. And it was such a strange experience to go through. And then getting various forms of medical procedures and nerding out about those changes too. It was, I mean, I use this word a lot, but it was magical. The things that I look forward to in the future is like engaging a whole lot more with, I guess, a media environment. Being a scholar and a writer, you end up spending a lot of your time alone and making knowledge stuff that like probably no one really experiences because a lot of it is published in obscure academic journals and stuff. So I'm hoping that in the future, I can engage in media. Like I want to start a Twitch stream. I want to be able to reach people in a fun way. I want to be able to do public research that actually makes some kind of difference. But also there's other things. Like I want to tell stories. I want to write novels, and I want to like be able to find myself surrounded by like creative storytelling. I also just like want to have a big, beautiful poly family one day. I want to live in a house full of like people I'm partnered to. Always, a lot of poly people joke about having like poly communes where everyone lives in a house or like a small village in the woods. Anyways, I imagine myself being in all kinds of non-traditional type relationships and like just finding love in unlikely and beautiful places. For the rest of you trans fam out there, I hope that even when you're at the most painful and alone parts of your lives, that you can look to the future and understand that there's a lot of people in the same boat as you, that trans people are amazing and beautiful, and there's a wide community of trans people out there that will support and love you. Transitioning is the best, and I highly encourage you to do it if you're questioning. For the cis people out there, treat your trans friends with respect. Be sure to not misgender them and prioritize their pronouns. Make sure that your trans friends and your trans family know that you're there to love them and support them. It means so much. And I guess the last thing is, if you're a cis person looking in at the videos this organization is putting out, just remember that trans people are more than just media stereotypes. We're complicated human beings. We have emotions, we have loved ones, we have things that we enjoy doing in life. We feel pain, we feel happiness. Like, there's so much more to trans people than being trans.